Welcome to the Real Monster D. That would be me. Hey, shall we start this video with opening some of my monster mail? Oh no, not metal mail this time. This time, we have something quite a bit different. Are we ready to tear on in and see what lies inside? Here we go. Whatever could it be? Something monstrous indeed. Something quite different. Nothing special about the packaging here. This is Alice Cooper's Horror Box. Ooh, yes. It is by Fitz Games. Do not throw fits. You play fits. Yes. This was a horror-inspired game that I initially saw in a clever ad on Facebook, in which the man himself, Alice Cooper, was actually playing this game. What a way to sell, right? It pulled me right on in. So, exactly what is Horror Box? Let me see here. It says, the game is simple. Each round, one player picks a question card. The other players share their best answer card. The funniest pair wins. Oh, and watch out for the dares. All right, written by a team of horror-loving comedians. Interesting. So, shall we tear through the plastic and dig even further? Perhaps we'll do a little sample here today. I know I enjoy mixing my horror with some comedy. Oh, get a look at that. It's like a nice black coffin. A card coffin. Oh, looks like more instructions and or possibly a poster. This is like an instructional poster. And it seems especially helpful if you are to be a horror pirate. Interesting. Very interesting. It says, our story. There are a lot of card games out there, but none that really speak to the horror experience. Our team wanted to make a game that helps people put their phones away and just have fun. I can agree with that. I think a little break from the electronic brick on your ear is quite nice. We loved making Alice Cooper's Horror Box and hope you love it too. All right. So there are hardcore rules. There's a next round. There's a getting started. There's a judge. And why would I bore you with reading all the instructions, although they do seem fairly simple? Oh, look at this. This card game is perhaps the only game I have ever received that came with a gift. It is a Fitz Games $5 gift card off of my next Fitz Games purchase. How nice is that? That does actually encourage me to purchase more Fitz Games. And it says, meet the whole family. Very nice. All right. So there are actually expansions to this horror game. And, wow, quite a bit here. So, I see at the beginning there are these white shiny cards. I am just going to pull out a card and read it. And we will just see what happens, huh? Are you enticed so far? Alice Cooper's Horror Box. Dare. Oh. The dare is blank. The dare has crows and a gnarled old tree on it. So perhaps the dare is to go and communicate with the crows? I could potentially get behind that. Oh, is the dare actually telling you to go and commit a murder? By hanging out with the crows, because a group of crows is a murder. You knew that, right? Of course. All right. Let's see here. Huh. Interesting. So there's another dare card, and it looks to be something that might want to take you away. This is supposed to be Alice Cooper's box, but now all of a sudden I have Blue Oyster Cult on my mind. Interesting. Let me move further down. Let me see here. It says, oh, it's a question card. It says, I think blank is going to be the next horror movie trend. And you are supposed to put in, oh, here we go. How about I add my own answer? I think that I think that malevolent card games is going to be the next horror movie trend. How about that? Would you watch a horrible card game? You may be watching one right now, the way I'm not quite playing. Anyway. Oh, I get it. Watch this. So these are question cards, and these are answer cards. You pair them up, and you have fun. So, death by way of little baby pigs with human faces. Ah. Okay, I like this. This actually is fairly easy to pick up, especially for someone who has not paid any close attention to instructions. Ooh. You are watching this feed live. This is the first time I've ever even opened this, and look what I draw. Krampus is to Christmas as a solar-powered T-1000 is to Hanukkah. How is that for a brand new holiday icon? The Hanukkah solar-powered T-1000. Ooh. I could get behind that. Wow. Well, that is certainly entertaining. Have you ever come across a card game quite like this? So it is a card game with a game card, gift card, and so much creepy, comical fun to be had. As you may well know, one of my favorite bands of all time is Budgie. And as I alluded in my previous interview with John Gallagher, one of the things I find most intriguing about the band is its strange, unusual, frequently brought up motif of birds. For those of you who may not know, the name itself, Budgie, of course, derives from a bird. It actually is short for budgerigar, or I have also heard it pronounced budgerigger, perhaps depending upon where you are from. But most of you will probably know the same creature as a parakeet, more common. And yes, to no surprise, they make great use of the budgie, the parakeet, as a motif in their many, many album covers. Boy, starting out with the very first album cover, you have this sort of soldier riding a horse through the sky with a little budgie head. And this motif continued off and on throughout so many of their albums. Growing up in the heyday when these albums were first coming out, it must have been an interesting puzzle to wonder what the next album was going to be and how they were going to work budgies into the actual cover art, or if they were. Intriguing. But aside from budgies themselves, they actually took that bird motif and stretched it far larger, far wider, with a greater wingspan than you might imagine. Why, even starting off with the original Budgie album, the funny thing about that is this album was actually taken from what was going to be a discarded album cover of the band Hawkwind. Yes, there was originally going to be a hawk's head where the Budgie head now sits. So, right off the bat, you have this sort of double bird theme. And of course, when you get into the songs, so many of the song titles had bird names or bird motifs in them. Why, you had a parrot fashion bill, you had quactors and bureaucrats, get it? Quactors, doctors, ducks, quactors. From their final album, you had both the album title and the song, You're All Living in Cuckoo Land, as well as the final track, I'm Compressing the Comb on a Cockerel's Head. You've got to love those Budgie super long titles, but cockerel, also known as a cockatiel, a very cute and popular little pet bird. Yes. By the way, I do not necessarily recommend or condone trying to compress a cockatiel's head crest. Even songs that did not have bird titles directly still made references to birds. Why, the most iconic song of all, Bread Fan. Now, of course, the subject matter is actually about making money and finding success, that sort of thing. But the fact they went way out of their way to use bread as a term for money, of course, you know, bread, commonly known as a thing that birds enjoy eating and being fed to in the park. And then you have both the album and the song In for the Kill, and they make no qualms about what you ought to be thinking with this. First thing I think about is, you know, a bird of prey coming in for the kill with its talons. Have you ever actually listened to In for the Kill right next to Uriah Heep's Birds of Prey? An interesting dynamic avian duo there. Despite all this, I would still be fair to say that they actually do not really overdo the bird motif. They talk about many other things. In fact, most of the subjects in most of their songs have little or nothing to do with birds. Often forlorn or lost love or frustration or just the thought of making music and the angst that goes along with it in general. But they have such a unique way of threading it through everything they do. It is almost as though, in many cases, they don't necessarily even try, but the birds sort of follow them, trailing behind. Tony Borges' guitar play, if you listen in certain spots, has this unique, high, squealy sound which very frequently, in my ear, mimics bird calls, whether it's a seagull or some other sort of avian creature. And even Burke Shelley himself, with his very high-pitched voice, can be said to have something of a bird tone, and by some accounts, perhaps even bird-like features. One of my favorite uses of birds comes in the track Black Velvet Stallion in the album If I Were Britannia, I'd Waive the Rules. At the very end of this haunting, melodic, unique song, it ends with a crazy loud bell crash, and it stops, and you hear actual birds chirping. This only happened because they apparently had a large bell submerged in water trying to create a unique musical effect, and the birds were just chirping by virtue of them recording outside, and they left it in. Because if you already have a band named after a bird, why would you get rid of any bird sounds that find their way into your songs? But I think that is one of the things, again, that makes this band so unique. Perhaps some might look back and say that maybe this is one of the things that made them a bit too weird for the general public. but I think it just adds to their overall uniqueness. You have this heavy, bluesy, doom-like sound, and yet all throughout this you have weaved birds who are light and flighty and fluffy in some cases, and yet they find ways to make them eerie and mysterious and dreamlike. I appreciate a band that has the kind of depth to where you always have little itty-bitty things in songs, whether in lyric or in instrument or even in art, that you can hunt for and find and always learn new things. I challenge you to try to find lyrics among their songs involving seagulls or sounding like seagulls or perhaps other birds that I am aware of. Oh, and by the way, after the entire thing of Budgie was entirely done, Burke Shelley, in his later years, has joined a group calling themselves the Night Owls. So again, even outside of Budgie, the bird motif continues to fly on. Well, I hope this inspires you to dig a little deeper into the Budgie catalog and perhaps look for some things that you may or may not have noticed before. Hopefully, if you've never heard of the band before, you certainly do not just fly on by, but you come on in for the kill. Talons bare and ready. If nothing else, you can certainly say that this does not make the band cheap. Cheap, 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 cheap. Welcome to the drawing challenge. I think it would be a delightful idea if we do something a little bit festive as well as fierce today. Yes, I'm going to do my own rendition of a classic holiday character. Of course, I'm talking about the Yule Cat. Yes, the legendary Icelandic giant feline which stalks the villages and countryside, waiting to take down any poor unfortunate soul who did not wind up with clothes for Christmas gifts. So, the next time you open up a box and it is socks, do not scoff. I'm going to attempt this Yule Cat monster in 5 minutes or less. And here's the timer. And we begin. Have you heard of the legend of the Yule Cat before? Let us see how monstrous I could possibly get with this. First, I'm going to start with a very simple kind of little village. Accent on little. Just making some little houses. Almost make this sort of greeting card worthy. So what are some of your favorite strange sort of holiday traditions or legends, I suppose? You know, we have the classic, Santa Claus, and of course within the last few years, Krampus has really gained a lot of steam. And now the Yule Cat has been working his way up into popularity. Makes me wonder when the first person is going to finally give in or just do a big enough budget Yule Cat movie. Let's see here. Do not worry, the cat shall appear. I'm just setting up the scene for it. Alright. So what do you think you would do if you encountered a giant cat? I do not know that most of us would know what we do if we found something as big as a mountain lion, right? Let alone a cat larger than several houses. Now, I'm going to have fun today and add a little color earlier. Perhaps I'm just feeling a little more bold today. But I do believe I'm going to be able to add that cat. Make it nice and scenic. Alright. Oh. How about we add more green where the houses are? That way, without even using black, we could give an element of shadow. Alright. Next, we are going to add some color to the houses themselves. Just a little bit. Just enough to make them stand out. Oh, are you afraid that cat will not appear? Never fear. Are you among those who have a fear of cats anyway? Have you known anyone to fear cats? Quite a few people do, as it turns out. Many people love them, and many people are also not as fond of them. Now, regardless of what camp you fall into, perhaps this one might do it in for you. Make you feel a little bit differently. See here. Ugh, almost too big. Sometimes I just go and things happen as I do not even necessarily plan. That is part of the fun of the quick draw. The marker has a partial life of its own. Alright. Let me see here. I'm going to do I call it I believe it's the Calico M. You can correct me if it's different breed of cat, but there are certain types of cats that always have an M sort of on their forehead. Since we've run out of room to do proper, proper ears, I figure that is the least I can do. Oh, and let me add a little bit of orange to this cat. Oh! Wow. That is time. And that is our cat. Markers flying everywhere. What do you think? Is that one festive feline? I do believe that the moral of the story might be, if you get clothing for Christmas or for any sort of occasion, do not fret. Be grateful for what you do get. If nothing else, maybe it is a good idea to just stay home for the holidays and not venture out. Well, I hope you have enjoyed this entire episode of The Real Monster D. If you have, please do click that like button and toll the bell so you can be ready, willing, and salivating for the very next episode of The Real Monster D. Till next time.